Welcome to the LEC studio for the end of the first round robin. The teams have one last chance to make a statement before we start the deciding half on the race for playoffs and worlds. If you missed yesterday, the on-air talent team are broadcasting from home this week. Please check out @LEC on Twitter for more information. I'm Quickshot and I'm joined today by Froskurinn and young Vedius as we round out the first half of the split. Before we dive into today's content, I need to give a shout out to Yamato Cannon and to Sandbox Gaming. If you care about spoilers, I don't. Sandbox won their first game. It is compliments of Yamato. He just landed in the LCK and he's managed to pick up a huge win for them. I do have a personal shout out from one of the producers here in Europe. It's quite heartfelt. It's quite strong. Kevin Bell says you're a traitor.
Listen, we're carrying North America right now with our imports. We're now carrying LCK. Europe cannot be stopped. Good job, Yamato. You got him on the board.
Yeah, we're on our way. And I love the fact that Yamato's already at 100% win rate. The European draft's coming through. I love it. We're all supporting you, Yamato, even if our producer isn't. We love you. Best of luck over in the LCK.
Remember, Kevin Bell is the one that said you're the traitor. Now listen, after a first half that has been filled with so many surprises, Mad Lions will begin week 5 in first place again. They are followed by Rogue, and then all the other favorites are now chasing from behind. I mean, Vedius, this is an insanely important split. If you miss playoffs, you miss worlds. It's crazy what's happened so far.
Yeah, we have to keep reminding viewers because our format is a little bit different. There is no gauntlet. Top 6 teams at the end of the regular season will qualify for playoffs. Top 4 of the playoffs will go to Worlds. So it is very important that you at the very least secure a spot in playoffs. And as you just saw in our standings, things are pretty competitive right now. Our top teams have been struggling. Some of the middle of the pack teams have gotten significantly better. And we're seeing a pretty competitive league right now. I think the quality of games yesterday was a little underwhelming overall, and I'm hoping that the quality improves a little bit today, but it definitely makes for a fun split, that's for sure.
It really does. It makes for a fun viewing experience as well. Sometimes those fiestas are very entertaining. Super quickly as well for everybody at home, as you may already know, we do have a slightly different format this summer, as Vedius has already alluded to. There will be no LEC next week. We will have a break week, and the following weekend, we will return for week 5. Let's continue talking about what we saw yesterday. Patch 10.13 landed. We saw some shakeups and some shifts. 200 years has passed. Aphelios is gone. He's disappeared. His nerf rather, was like hugely impactful. Froskurinn, aren't you so happy?
Okay, yes, I am happy to see that Aphelios' reign of terror has ended. That said, maybe unpopular opinion, I don't think that he was always that broken. I think that he was really versatile, so he worked in a ton of competition. But teams, here's the thing, Vedius, it was Varus and it was Kalista that were being banned all the time. Aphelios was always let through, and he's just such a versatile champion that they would grab him up. But most teams were fine taking the handshake on Ezreal versus Aphelios. And yeah, the nerf does slightly help, but I actually think it was the most time that the teams had spent with Aphelios, that they were starting to figure out what countered him. He is relatively short range, so you can outrange him with things like the Azir or the Ezreal, or you can go for straight up dive and just get onto the backline because he's also relatively low mobility. So yes, the nerf does help, but I think it was also just time that the teams had to figure out this champion.
And I do agree with Frosk that I think that
begrudgingly, apparently.
Out. Yes, because I do think that the champion is a little overtuned, and I do think that the nerf to Death Stance also contributed to why we're seeing him a little bit less. So I think it would be disingenuous to say that nerfs didn't influence his priority at all, but I'm aligned with Frosk in that I think the teams are getting better around it. But I do also think that as a result of Aphelios reducing in priority, that has increased the Kalista priority as well. And I think that right now she is like the go-to AD carry for many dominant 2v2 bot laners. And if you can get your hands on her, then you're going to. So I think that she's going to be, even after her nerfs, it seems to me that she's become like, she was already S tier before, but now I think her priority is slightly higher than it was on the previous patch.
Yeah, and then the question and the thing that teams are going to have to track and fans will track is who actually plays Kalista and who doesn't. Fnatic is probably the big team that people will gravitate towards. You know, the fact that they have to ban Kalista from blue side because they don't want to burn the priority pick on that one, and they would prefer to play the Syndra Nautilus rather than the Kalista Nautilus.
I just love seeing some of the shifts and the changes. And now I am begrudgingly going to give Vedius some kudos here. At the beginning of Ready Check,
No, don't do it,
he made the
Trevor.
bold statement that AP Cogmore could be a thing. And not only was it a thing, Caps obliterated Misfits with that pick. Take it away, Vedius.
So I think that the important thing to note is that Cogmore is not some like brokenly overpowered mid laner right now. I think that he as a champion is just now another option that mid laners can choose into things like Azir. Because we already know that Xerath and Vel'Koz are actually two picks that would be considered a counter pick to Azir because you can outrange him, outpoke him. And I just think that AP Cogmore fits into that role. Do I think he's suddenly going to take over the meta? No. Do I think we're going to see everyone have the same performance that Caps had yesterday? No. But I do think that he is going to make his way into the meta a little bit more. And personally, I'm excited. I quite like watching the little puppy reign terror on the Rift.
Shout out to Tamara on our graphics team who does these beautiful curvies for us. I love that in the itemization there was the Magi sauce.
It is a core itemization.
Yeah, and Cogmo wasn't the only thing that Vedius was correct about yesterday. We also saw the Nocturne come out. I do think that Nocturne is actually in a really healthy spot. And again, it's because you need to find a mixed damage profile for that AD carry. And most of the time, Fnatic have been going towards the Graves. Now they can go for the Nocturne. There's not a ton of viable mid laners that are AD mid laners. It's no longer the Kianas that are running around. So you need to find where you're putting that AD, especially if you're also running a Syndra bot lane. So with the recent buffs on 10-13, Nocturne's passive makes him that much faster in the jungle. And he's a really good option for adding an AD powerhouse to your
I
composition.
thoroughly love the fact that during Ready Check yesterday, both of you two, and then myself got very animated and discussion heavy. Frosk, you also said, without Vedius's horrible Nocturne bias, that the pick is fine, okay? But I will give you the closing thought here on the patch review, Vedius. Do you hope that we'll see more Nocturne?
I think that it can work. Again, I don't think it's going to be like a mainstay. I really loved it in combination with the Twisted Fate because I think it helps synergize that early snowball. And if anyone's going to do it like a G2 based on how they've been playing, it wouldn't surprise me if they went for something like that. They already run a lot of Pantheon as well. So I think that it can rise up in popularity. I think the buff was pretty significant to his jungle clear. I'm still waiting for that Nocturne mid to counter TF though. So when we see that, that's when I'll be happy.
No.
Right, let's move on. Let's move on. You've lost the plot. This is what I thought was going to happen yesterday, and you ended up giving me like real serious stuff, so that just threw me off. Listen, we are closing out the first round robin of the summer season today. With that in mind, we wanted to take a look at some suggestions for who the mid-split MVP could be. Now, before Vedius and Froskurinn announce who the mid-split MVP is, we shortlisted some candidates. And just to see them on your screen, Selfmade, Humanoid, Larson, Caps, let's start with Froskurinn and walk me through the step-by-step process of how we got to this list and why there's only one G2 member there.
Okay, first and foremost, the fact that there's only one G2 member shows you how competitive the split has been. But I will say that when Vedius walked into my desk, he's like, we need to talk about mid-split MVP. It was basically a conversation of like, look at all these amazing players. I can't carry them all. And I think that even before we revealed the mid-split MVP, shows how competitive and diverse the field has been. I do want to start with Selfmade in the jungle because I feel he was one of the instantaneous names that I gravitated towards. He has been the best performing jungle. Fnatic recognized that. That's why they're giving him such priority in the draft phase. It's those first pick Grave picks. It's also seeing him pop off on things like the Nocturne. He has been mechanically just on fire, a clear upgrade, and just breath of fresh air to this team. And one of the reasons why they are still quite competitive.
Yeah, I think that he has been one of the best performing members on Fnatic, and I think that his impact is just so clearly felt in every single game. The play that you're seeing on your screen right now, this Lee Sin performance against, I believe it was Misfits, pretty much turned the game back in Fnatic's favor. So, like, the dude has had a phenomenal split, and I think that when Fnatic eventually get back on track, he's going to continue to perform at a very high level.
Now, Vedius, when we look at the next three names, they're all mid laners. Humanoid in particular is the one that actually stands out more to me right now. We talked last week about how statistically he is the best performing mid in the league right now. And he's kind of been the guy that has stolen the show, especially for fans as well. But, take me through why we've got three more mids as potential mid-split MVPs.
I mean, it was, Ender made a really interesting comment yesterday, which was that in the LEC, if you don't have a top 3 mid, you don't normally win the split. And I think what's really compelling right now is who is the best mid laner in Europe is a highly contentious topic, depending on who you speak to. And when I made a tweet the other day about who your MVP is, or your mid-split MVP was, so many people were like, Humanoid Larson, Humanoid Larson, Humanoid Larson. These two mid laners were at the front of everybody's mind because it feels like that they've elevated from what they were last split. Everyone knew that they were good, but now it feels like they're dominant in lane, they're consistently finding impactful plays, whether it be in team fights, in side lanes, whatever it is, and it feels like you can't ban them out either because they have such a deep breadth of champions. So I've been so impressed with the rise of these two young mid laners to being top contenders here in Europe.
They're superstars. That's the word that you need to use for it. At the very beginning of the split, we were talking about how the EU mids seem to have disappeared, that now Europe is kind of the region of these ADCs, but Larson and Humanoid are just putting on a clinic right now, and you have to have it. I think Ender made a phenomenal point. If the best player that Europe has ever created is Caps, and if you are actually chasing G2 and being serious about it, not just, the BS of, yeah, we want to win the best, we want to win the title, we want to contest G2, but no, creating a roster that says we are going to contest G2, you have to have incredible mid laners, and Humanoid and Larson are stepping up.
That's kind of why. And that is kind of why Caps is still on that list, because the man has really been the best performing player of G2 since the return to mid lane. Many eyes were sitting there expecting that Caps would be one of the best mid laners in Europe, and then in his very first game, he absolutely dominated. And while I do think he's had some mixed performances, he's had some games where he kind of ran it down, the games in which he just carries so hard on. So I think it would be disingenuous to not include him in the conversation, because he's definitely still one of the best mids that we have here.
I mean, the crazy thing is, depending on the criteria that you pick from, you could have a slightly different list here already. I mean, there was, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 names that I heard you guys discussing and debating back and forth. The interesting thing to me is, with these 4 names on the list, they're actually not the mid-split MVP. And before I ask Froskurinn to reveal it, Larson has another mid-split MVP candidate in mind. I want to see what he has to say.
Inspired because he's the best jungler in the world, who gives me all his camps. He lets me take every camp and every blue buff. So for me, he's the MVP in my heart.
Well, there we have it. Now it's going to be up to Froskurinn. Who is your mid-split MVP?
I'm sorry, Larson. It's not inspired, and it's about time that the supports get recognized. It's Kaiser. And the thing is that, we just talked about how influential mid lane is. To be able to actually compete at the top of Europe, you must have a good mid laner, and supports almost never get the recognition that they deserve. This guy is not only playing support at the top end level, so mechanically gifted, he's playing top lane at the top end level because he's running around with the Senna and the Wukong.
I've just been so impressed with what Kaiser has demonstrated this split. Last split, he was already showcasing that he's a top 3 support in Europe, but now we're getting so much consistency from him. We're getting a breadth of champion pools, and Frosk, you hit it in the you hit the nail on the head by saying this guy's playing multiple roles within his single role. The dude is so versatile, so flexible, so strong. And I think that when we talk about MVP, it's about, if you remove this player, could the team be the same? And in my opinion, Mad Lions couldn't. They need Kaiser to be able to do what they do, which is why I think that he is so important and why he is my mid-split MVP.
It used to be that when we talked about League of Legends players, that you could say that someone was mechanically gifted as kind of like a bonus to them. We are now in the era of League of Legends where if you are not mechanically gifted, you do not get to play the game. If you don't have hands, you've been patched out, and Kaiser has amazing hands. This boy is so clean. That Alistar performance against Origin swung the game back in their favor and are why they're on top of the standings.
I mean, it's absolutely terrifying and is so exciting as well. Every single game that passes, I believe more and more and more in the Mad Lions. So congratulations to Kaiser. He is our mid-split MVP. To get a better insight on exactly how great Kaiser is, check out the latest episode of LEC Mechanics.
Moonlight Vigil doesn't connect. Roman's going to chase Cersei out as they're both in the realm of death. Fate's Call now used. Humanoid chasing Nuke down towards the bottom side. He's going to get stunned. Cleanses immediately. Cersei's already dead. Roman takes him out in the depths. Roman now Upset's been knocked up, but he's able to cleanse and flash away. Destiny trying to get away as well as Shadow steps forward. Carsey exhausted. There's the shockwave. There's the shutdown. How far he goes down. Mad Lions find 3, and they find the perfect fight at the right time.
Often on the broadcast, we mention that teams fail to push their advantage, and sometimes games will stagnate. This concept can be hard to explain during a game, so I wanted to take some time to show you what this could look like. Now, I am sorry, Origin, but I am going to use you for the purpose of education. So this clip from Mad versus Origins, with Mad on the blue side and Origin on the red. Arome is killed by Alfari and Nukduck. Let's start by talking about what information Origin have. Firstly, they know that all of Mad have just reset and are on the base because of the TF ultimate. You can see these little circles around, or the eyes rather, around each of the players' heads. This gives full information over towards Origin. Origin also have full control over the river, with vision littering the entire our observers are highlighting. There's a ward here, there's a ward here, there's a ward here, they've got control wards here. A lot of vision control around this entire midsection, giving them a lot of control over the map. The final thing that Origin know is that the only TP user is on Arome, and Arome is dead for another 42 seconds. So Origin have a lot of information, and with this, they can sweep out the river in front of Baron because Mad won't be in a position to contest. With vision being cleared out and having mid priority, Baron is completely visionless from the perspective of Mad, and Origin should know this. On top of that, the other important note is that Orianna appears on the bot wave without a teleport. This is being highlighted by our observers right now. So a lot of information right now is making it very easy for Origin to actually set up a play for the Baron. But there is a very narrow window where they could play for the Baron. By starting the Baron and having the Nautilus in a position to cut off the flank from Mad, Origin can use the Fog of War to bait Mad into a fight. They also have the chance to secure Baron for themselves. This would put pressure on Mad and force them into making a decision, therefore accelerating the game. Origin don't do this though. Aphelios solo clears mid as they want to have this push in mid to create another point of pressure that Mad have to deal with. He then returns to the Fog of War. While this is happening, Twisted Fate is rotating to the top lane and walks over two crucial wards, which gives a lot of information to the Mad Lions. This means that Mad Lions are not as afraid of the potential Baron being started, so they can contest the mid wave and approach the river by using Kallista's W and sweeping out the ward at Baron, getting them closer to reclaiming control and information around the Baron. Mad now realize they can be proactive. By using their trinket on the Baron, they get all the information they need to actually start the Ocean Drake. This is then made even easier for Mad because Destiny moves his control ward from the Baron pit to clear out another bush, allowing the ward in the Baron pit to actually see everything. Origin had an opportunity here to accelerate the game, forcing Mad into a situation that was nothing but favorable for OG. Because they didn't, the game returned to a neutral state, and Mad were able to use their information more effectively to end up coming out ahead. Now, the goal of this segment is not to flame Origin. This isn't a reoccurring problem that Origin always demonstrate. It's one that's quite widespread in pro play that only the very best teams can consistently use. But it is these moments that make games feel faster and like you're always under pressure. At the highest level, if you don't force your enemy to make decisions, they won't make mistakes, giving you fewer opportunities to big them. A big thank you, of course, to Unso and our observers behind the scenes for helping set this one up, even in our difficult circumstances. Hello, Unso. I hope you're doing well. I hope you found this insightful, and maybe you can keep an eye out for it later in our match of the week.
I did not go to play, I came to dominate.
Europe has a very long legacy of rookie lineups, making us proud on the international stage. And the Mad Lions are already almost there. Hell, they even beat G2 Esports in a best-of-5, the first EU team to do so since the Misfits in summer 2018.
They've done it! It's the Mad Lions! The rookies have risen up!
You know, the rookies can actually surpass the veterans.
Dominate.
The way they play is nice to see, and the hunger really shows.
Mad Lions undisputed at the top of the table in the LEC. What can't this team do?
Just being first place doesn't mean that much to me. What I'm really happy about is how well we are doing as a team.
everything in the pit to try to get Nemesis, and he flashes over the wall. He's baited the fight, and Selfbait is now on a rampage in the backside. Selfbait still untouched, still full health. Whippo alive as well. They're chunking through. Nemesis on the backside trying to buy space for the rest of the team.
Nemesis came up behind them. Mad Lions turned around and blew him up.
Here's the Destiny Gate as Nuke looks to try and get behind them, but we've seen TFs fail this before, and immediately he's jumped on. Why do TFs do this against Mad Lions?
That's gonna be fun, going against Mad. It's only humanoid though from last year, but yeah, I'm just really excited for it.
So that Kobe is now back, I can finally prove that he's not better than me and that I deserve my place at Mad Lions.
I think he's happy to actually play against really good players again and with really good players.
Looking to dive the turret, but here comes the Destiny and it was cancelled! The shockwave cancels it, Kobe flashes away, Ingo's cries, Ingo's storm through another point, sitting on the top, but Kobe jumps over the wall with the instinct. Wuko is still going to try and chase him down as Cries is getting taken out by Kobe, he dodges around.
Well, I think it's going to be fun to play against Carsey. I didn't expect him to be third place or for him to perform that well anything, so
I hope this split we can actually compete again with the best teams, because this is where everyone is starting for their life.
He's going to be forced away. Feminine flashes, the Emperor's Divide locks him inside the jungle.
It may, however, be one of them. For Humanoid, who's about to smack Hylissang in the face, almost could have got the double there, gets the dissonance.
This will be the team fight that will decide the game.
Orianna can take over this fight, the command dissonance. Kaiser on the way in, and Fnatic are falling as Mad will take the Elder.
Dominate.
If we are going to be improving in the same way as last split, then we are definitely going to be like at the top.
An incredible victory for Mad Lions.
Misfits came out and really stuck it to Fnatic.
And well played by Misfits. I was a doubter.
Top of the standings, it's like rock, paper, scissors over here. Who's going to beat who?
Mad Lions taking on Misfits in our Alienware match of the week to close out the first half of the round robin. Froskurinn, I have one question for you: is can Mad Lions end the first round robin in sole possession of first place?
I mean, the answer is absolutely. What I think is really cool about this match of the week, though, is that it's kind of we always talk about this all the time, the turning of the page from old generation to new. And I know that Misfits have a lot of rookies on their team, but for me, it's like Febibin and Kabe versus Humanoid and Carzzy, especially that Kabe versus Carzzy matchup of, you know, finally taking them down and being like, yes, that was the cherry on top, taking down Misfits, taking down those old school historic names, and then standing on top of it all to say, this is the new LEC.
Oh, I cannot wait to see what Misfits do today. Whether or not they can put up a strong fight against Mad Lions, or whether Mad Lions are going to be finishing this 8-1. They truly are here to dominate. Mad Lions and Misfits, they will be closing out the first half of the summer season. Before that, though, we've got 4 games that do truly have huge impacts on the standings. With how close everything is now, one win can make a huge difference, Vedius. And there's a lot of pressure on every team below Mad Lions and really Rogue right now.
Yeah, there certainly is, Quickshot. I think what's interesting is when you look at the schedule, I think that there's very easy predictive favorites for each of the matchups, but we've been saying that for the vast majority of this split so far. So I feel as though a big question for me is coming into, as we're about to end the first half of the split, how are these teams going to be looking as they end the first half, and then thinking about the reset, the break next week, into coming back in week 5, because there's only a certain amount of time left, and all these wins will add up and matter, considering how competitive our split is.
Yeah, absolutely the case. Now, we are just about to get ready for SK taking on Rogue. These are 2 teams that have impressed in LEC Summer.
Crownshot and Limo on the wrong side of this, but Crownshot still has the flash. Limo's going to get locked up and he's already down. And now the fight really begins. Cap's able to get away with it. Explosive cast will take down Perks. And Wonder trying to get into the fight, but Crownshot is still alive. And Genax now able to teleport in and get on.
SK have come out the gate swinging. They have had a pretty impressive start to the split.
I really want to do well in summer. There's like no excuse.
They've been going to be in trouble, but here comes the ultimate. He starts dunking down. He starts healing up. And yeah, there's nothing left for Matt here on the top side. That is the difficulty that you mentioned. Go! No!
I have a really good team now. For team that can go to World is just a gift. I think we have the potential to go there. I'm not gonna make this year waste.
Well, for the German org, they are looking to pick up 5 wins. They're currently sitting 4-4. I think they have impressed me a little bit more than I was anticipating this summer, and they are fighting to make playoffs. We spoke to Crownie last night on PGL, and he was very cautious with his wording, but he said they want to play game by game, focus on their improvement, focus on their performance. And Froskurinn, they are looking at a postseason this summer.
Yeah, there are 2 races that are happening right now. There's the first race, which is Mad, G2, Rogue, Fnatic, and OG. Those are kind of the teams that you assume take playoffs. That's 5. We have 6 spots. So the last spot is the race between Misfits, Vitality, SK, and Excel. And frankly, it feels like SK are the team that are the closest to taking that final ticket, which is why people are so laser focused on them, because it's still a very tight race. But I think because of Crownshot's performance, people are erring on the side that it's probably going to be SK that get the opportunity to race for playoffs and to race for
I'm completely in line with Frosk on this one, because while I do think that Crownshot's having a solid split, I also just think that SK came into the season not only with the meta favoring them, but also with a clear line of attack and strategy of how they want to approach the game. And having that alignment and focus, I think, is so valuable, especially when you have a new player like Zazie being introduced to the roster and a roster swap in the form of Genex going from mid to top. And while they are a little inconsistent, I think that you have to recognize that they're doing a lot of things well. And if it weren't for Crownshot getting hit by that godlike stun from Reckless yesterday, there's a good chance that SK could have actually taken that game off of Fnatic. So they have the potential, if they're able to get the right formula for success, that is SK. The question is, how long can they keep it going?
That's really interesting to me, because one of the things we talk a lot about off air, and Vedius, you're one of the people that especially brings this up. SK, when they get the right formula, the right recipe, they can cook themselves a win. Let's turn our attention to their opponents. Rogue are a team that are developing, expanding their playbook. They are growing. Each individual member is stepping up. And right now, Rogue, they're sitting second in the LEC. And this team is developing at a fantastic rate, and we're really happy to see their growth.
We always knew that Rogue were a smart team, but it's that phrase right there, the development or the individual players stepping up, that I think is really sticking with me for Rogue, in particular Vander. One of the names that is kind of missing from that conversation about, potential mid-split MVPs, I think Vander is right there. He has been so consistent 100% of the time, and it's not as flashy as Kaiser's play, but, it's those little things, standing in front of Han Sama to block the arrow so Han Sama can get the back, constantly being the first guy to the play. These Thresh performance in particular, Vander is just on a completely different level. This is one of the best splits that I've ever seen from him.
And I think it's interesting because when you look at Vander, for a long time, he was kind of like that outlier support, the guy that everyone knew was good, but was never in the conversation for top 3. And that, who wants to talk about being the 4th best support in the league, right? But I think that this split, he showcased so much consistency, and his impact is very much felt, along with the rest of Rogue doing so well as well. And it's funny because he's in almost every single player of the game vote, but the fans never voted for him. So we just wanted to make sure that,
Twitter too.
Where is the justice?
He said that on Twitter too. He's like, guys, where's my support?
And this is the thing. This is our shout out to you, Vander. We see the effort you're putting in. We recognize how impactful you are for your team. And we think that he is a core standout to what is making Rogue so successful.
I need to give him a special shout out as well. It is vintage Vander. As the old man on broadcast that has managed to see him carrying back in the day on Team Rocket and his performances on H2K. There have been individual splits where Vander was in the conversation for top 3 and was in the conversation for the best support in the league, but he's been playing for many, many years, and those splits are pretty few and far between. Now, we've got less than a minute before we go to picks and bans. Let's quickly talk about Larson. Yesterday, he popped off against Origin. Frosk, I'm going to throw it to you. He was one of the candidates for the mid-split MVP, and obviously today, we're expecting good things from him as well.
Yeah, and for a lot of reason. We just used the consistency word with Vander. I think that can absolutely be applied to Larson. The only thing that I want more from Larson, I know he has it in him, is those pop-off 1v9 carry performances that we kind of expect of our elite mid laners. And I've seen Larson do it. I'm not saying that he can't. Now I just want to see more of it. I want more of a taste of Larson, get more experience with this guy.
Definitely the case. We have 10 seconds left. I want to know predictions. Who will win this game? Vedius, you get to go first.
I'm going to stick with Rogue. I think that so far the first half of the split has been super strong, and after yesterday's rough game, I'm expecting a lot of stuff from them today.
It's time to go #Rogue.
It's time to go Rogue. I like that one as well. We will see if the Rogue Summer Party does continue here today as we'll leave it to the casters for Game 1. Dracos, I hope you're wearing a shirt today.